Did you guys hear about the story of the dude who gave chocolates to every single girl in his high school? Like, he only gave chocolates to the girls, nothing for the boys. I remember reading an article about it, and I was like, that's gotta be the biggest simp I've ever even heard of, Jesus Christ. But then I remembered, like, holy cow, that's actually not the biggest simp I've ever seen. Because I've actually seen the biggest simp in the entire world with my own two small Asian eyes. So the story begins all the way back in my first year of middle school. I went to a middle school called Albion. And at Albion Middle School, every single trimester, there would be a talent show. And so I played Counting Stars by One Republic. And I made it into audition, and later I played that song in front of the entire school. And I got a standing ovation. Now the bad thing about it was that I was kind of a douche about it, and I got a massive ego. Now, anytime that somebody would play the piano for the talent show and that person was not me, I'd sit there in the audience and I'd look down at them and I'd be like, pathetic. Try again when you have some actual skill at the piano. And it continued this way for a while, until one day in 7th grade, a blonde girl walks up to the piano. Her name was Grace. And before she started, I was like, so another piano player seeks to challenge my authority. And the moment that she starts playing the piano, my jaw hits the freaking floor. She was good. She was insanely good at piano. Now, I want to clarify once again that I'm not the simp in this story. I'm not. In fact, I was such a not simp during this period that I would go around saying that Grace's piano piece was, and I quote, all scales and no skills. I was a jerk in middle school, man. So for the rest of my middle school career, I hated Grace's guts, dude. Every single time that I heard her name, I would get so mauled. I may or may not have had a superiority complex back in middle school. I ended up graduating middle school and I went over to a high school. Unfortunately, there were no talent shows in this high school. There were, however, debate tournaments. I pull up to the debate classroom on the very first day of high school. And who do I find sitting behind me? It was Grace, the girl who clapped my cheeks in piano and would proceed to clap my cheeks in debate for the next 6 months. I actually didn't mind being beaten. Not in a literal sense, but I didn't mind getting beaten in debate because I got to talk to Grace a lot more. Now, the first time that Grace and I actually talked, I was not a big fan of her. I actually hated her guts. But then she started to sort of grow on me. And she was like really smart and talented. And at one point, my friend was like, ew, Tony, I bet you like Grace. And I was like, no. Ah, so lame, so cringe. And then I went home that day and I was like, huh. How could this happen? How? I hated her guts in middle school. How could I end up becoming such a simp? So after several months, I finally went to a debate tournament. So in between debate rounds, I'm talking with Grace and one other girl called Leah in the school's common area. So the commons area for the school, it was like a huge open space, dude. So there weren't a lot of people in this room, but a lot of space. So like if I wanted to see somebody, say for example, all the way across the room, it would be super easy for me to see them. And I could tell who they were and what they looked like. And I was talking to Grace and another girl, and I was farming fat little W's, dude. I was a funny guy back then. In fact, one time, a senior actually came up to me and he said that I was one of the most likable and funny freshmen that he's ever met. And Grace agreed with him. And I've actually been chasing that high ever since. Part of the reason that I've never done drugs or I've never tried to get high is because anytime I need to feel a pure rush of ecstasy, I just think back on that moment. Oh! And so yeah, I was making really good jokes and generally just being a funny guy. And then a stranger comes into the group and she interrupts me, and it's a girl from another school, and then she starts whispering to Grace. And Grace talks to Leah and she's like, can you come with me? And so Grace and Leah leave and I'm left by myself. And so I watch Grace and Leah walk over to a group of people by a staircase, And I look carefully, and there's a dude, and he's hiding behind the stairs. And so this senior called Omid, he comes up to me, and a bunch of his friends follow. Now, Omid, he was actually my hero back then. He was a really cool guy. He looked like the Chad meme, you know, like the guy that goes, yes, or whatever, right? You know, that meme. But he was like a Middle Eastern Chad. So he was like a minority dude, but he was like really cool. And he was my hero because of that, because I'm a minority dude too. And I want to be a Giga Chad like Omid. And so he asked me, what happened? Why'd the girls leave? Where are the hoes at? And I had no answer. I was still in shock. Like I was in the comedy zone and somebody interrupted me. Like who does that? And that's when we see it. The dude behind the stairs, he comes crawling out and he starts talking to Grace. I remember this moment very clearly. Omid turns to me and he's like, yo, is it just me or does that guy look like a fish? He actually looks like, and I quote, he looks like a goddamn guppy. And I squint, which is not too hard for me, and I get a glimpse at the Guppy Man. And he actually does look like a fish, like his eyes stick out a lot. He looked like the sort of dude who would actually drop on the deck and flop like a fish whenever he heard the SpongeBob intro. And Leah she walks back to us. And I'm like, what happened? What's going on? Who has the audacity to interrupt a man when he's in the middle of farming lol W's? And Leah fills us in. Apparently what had happened was this. So the Guppy Man, and we'll call him that from now on, the Guppy Man had been admiring Grace from afar. So while I was talking to Grace, he got jealous and angry that I was talking to her. And so he sends over his loyal minion, the stranger girl, to interrupt me. She tells Grace to go over to the stairs, and Leah follows. And he said to Grace, he thought that she was the most beautiful girl at this entire debate tournament, which is probably the worst sentence that you could ever say to anyone. And I'm in shock, because the moment that I hear that my comedy zone and my lol W's get interrupted by a creepy Guppy Man, my mind goes blank with rage, dude. And I just start seeing red, dude. Admittedly, I cannot see very much, so red is a new one for me, but it is what it is. And so I turn in Guppy Man's direction, who's like 20 to 30 feet away, and I yell, "Grow some effing balls, you pussy!" Yes, I did actually scream at him to grow some effing balls, you pussy. Unfortunately, Guppy and Grace did not hear me. But Omid and his friends, they actually started laughing. Keep in mind, a bunch of seniors laughing at a freshman kid's joke. And Omid, he turns to me and he holds out a fist for a fist bump. And he says, "Kid, you're alright." And I was like, I did it. I'm truly living now. Needless to say, that was probably the best moment of my entire life. But that's not the end of the story. Grace comes back, and I see that she's holding something in her hand, but it's a $20 bill. And I'm like, what? Why do you have $20 in your hand? Because keep in mind that she does not have pockets. Because at debate tournaments, you're supposed to wear nice clothes, which means that she was wearing a dress. And girls, you know how it is. Dresses don't usually have pockets. She wasn't holding $20 in her hand before she left me, but now she's holding $20 when she comes back, which means that something must have happened for her to obtain stonks like that. And so she tells us, she fills us in on the full story after Leah left. Apparently, the guy kept complimenting her, and his group of friends gathered around him to hype him up. And afterwards, Guppy Man, he asks Grace for her number, and she gives it to him. Like an idiot. So stupid, Grace, why would you do that? But I'm like, okay. Where do the $20 come in? Where did you get the $20? Get this! Alright? After she gives him her number, he gives her $20 to thank her for giving him her number. Omid, his friends, and me, we were all scared out of our minds. We were horrified, bro. And I'm certain that all of us, to some extent, suffer from PTSD from the simpery that we saw on that day. We were 30 feet away, but we could all tell that something terrible happened when we felt the simping happen. Like, the Guppy Man literally radiated like an aura, a pure energy of simpery. It like felt like a physical pressure crushing down on us. I would not be surprised if Grace and Leah actually died in their 30s from cancer because they experienced the man's simp aura from point blank range. So let me reiterate, okay? The Guppy Man saw me talking to Grace and he got jealous. So he decided to pull her away as I was in the middle of my little W zone. He was too shy to tell her that she was beautiful face to face, so he used one of his minions to take her away, and then he gassed her up for several minutes with his friends hyping him up the entire time. And after receiving his number, he gave her $20. The crazy thing is that I talked to Grace after that whole ordeal happened. And I was like, yo. Did Guppy Man ever call you? And she said that he didn't text or call her once. And she gave him the correct number. And I was like, so let me get this right. He gave you $20 and he never called you again. And so now he's collected your phone number like some sort of twisted homunculus. And she's like, yup. My dream is that one day I go walking through like Las Vegas or something and I see a familiar guppy looking man and he's asking prostitutes to just spit in his mouth and he pays them $20 for each spit. And I'll look at him and say, you haven't changed a bit, old man. Godspeed, soldier. After that year, I transferred to a new high school and I never saw Grace again. The end. By the way, if you enjoyed that and you're watching this on YouTube, please make sure to drop a subscription because I actually do really appreciate it and really helps. So thank you so much for watching and I'll catch you in the next one. Later.